She was born perfectly healthy. She was beautiful, and at her 4-month well check, we ended up being an hour late getting called back. I finally went up to the desk and I asked, is there anywhere I can change and nurse my baby? We've been here for an hour, and they just panicked. They were like, what, an hour? We're so sorry. And it turned out we weren't checked in. And when I got her back there, the doctor was apologizing and just asking me how she was doing. And I was like, but that's new. Like, I've never seen her do that before. And her little arm was just doing like this. And he just nodded his head and listened to me and was like feeling her arm the whole time that I was talking. And I had no idea anything was going on. So he listened to me, walked out, a nurse stepped in, and he came back, her arm quit pulsing like this, and he came back in and said, your baby's had a seizure. And I never had an experience where it felt like the walls were coming in, like slowly around me. And I just thought, you have to hold it together. So he said, I have a great friend in the emergency department at the children's hospital, and they're expecting you. There's an ambulance on the way to get you. So I texted him and I was like, please don't call me because I need to keep it together, but this is what's happening. So they said, well, they were probably febrile, or it was probably febrile, and it's likely she'll never have another one. So we went home hopeful, full of prayers, and just thought, oh gosh, thank goodness it wasn't worse. This probably won't ever happen again. And then we were back a week later. And then we lost count. They put her on a rescue med at first. She ended up on a daily seizure med and just progressively failed the meds. So she would have seizures and they would up the medicine, and then she would reach a point where they couldn't increase it anymore for her weight. And then they would add another, either switch the med or they would add another med. And now she's ended up with 4 seizure meds and a rescue med and a bridge med that we add when we travel or she's sick. And then she has a sleep med that is for some also a seizure med. So, and she's on the ketogenic diet, so that is also another form of medication for her. We try to keep her in ketosis to help keep her seizures at bay, but she still has some that break through. We all go to the hospital if she has multiple seizures, because if we give her rescue med more than once, it can stop her heart. And there have been some times where she's coded. And there was one time in particular in 2020 that she got an unknown viral infection and she just wouldn't stop seizing, and her fevers weren't under control. And so they had to put her into a medically induced coma. Fortunately, we're able to take her out of the coma and she wasn't seizing anymore, but they just tried everything. And then just recently, we spent most of November and December in hospital for about a month. And it was the first hospitalization that wasn't from a seizure. So she had an infection that went septic, and things just went downhill really fast. And they needed to intubate her, and it was all happening very fast. But her body was it was wreaking havoc on her body. And they let us know that with where her stats were at, that her heart could stop. But we didn't have a choice. So we hoped and prayed, and they were able to intubate her. And it was a battle for a while. I don't remember how many days, but to get her stable. And when they did try to extubate her, it was unsuccessful. They couldn't keep her oxygen up, so they re-intubated her. I lost track of time, but again, however many days later, they extubated her successfully. and she recuperated better than any other hospitalization, but it was the first one that was for something other than seizures. However, the Dravet syndrome is what perpetuated everything. She's so prone to infection, and it's hard for her to communicate, so we didn't know anything was wrong until it was all very bad. Our everyday life is like a continual battle. She was diagnosed with the SCNA1 gene mutation at 11 months old, and since then we've had her in early intervention and therapies, and now she's in physical therapy, speech, occupational therapy, and 2 other speeches. And then she has ABA most days of the week as well. So those are just her therapies. And then she has specialist appointments and appointments that she has to have for testing because of all of the meds she's on, as well as just to keep up with all of her functions. And we also go to a Dravet specialist that's in Tennessee. So when we got the diagnosis of the SCN1A gene mutation, I remember the doctor saying, don't just look at the severe end, because it's a spectrum. So there's febrile seizures all the way to Dravet syndrome on the severe end of the spectrum, but don't just look at the severe end. And we started, well, first when they told us it was adolescent epilepsy one day, and they couldn't find anything else wrong with her, no delays. And then the very next day, those genetic results came back, and they just ripped that rug right off from under our feet.
The nurse that came in when they told us what it was, and we pull out our phones and we start Googling, and you don't realize how severe it can be. But the nurse came in and said, it's okay, some kids will actually go to school. And really, that's just being able to go to school is the hope.
Yeah. So McCall doesn't go to school. She is medically homebound because school contains all of her triggers: overstimulation, germs and illness, overheating, just excitement. And so we've tried to put her in little things to get her exposed to peers and to new experiences. We had her in hippotherapy, which is therapy with horses, and we've had to pull back and stop those things because her seizure frequency was just through the roof. So we are fortunate that we're able to do medical homebound schooling. That is not meant to be a long-term thing. So we are hoping and praying that it's not going to be forever, and she will be able to go to school one day. When we got that diagnosis, our Dravet syndrome specialist suggested contacting and getting in touch with the Dravet Syndrome Foundation. And so I found their website and their Facebook page, and I stayed up on that Facebook page every night and just asked parents questions. And I don't know what I would have done to get through those especially that first year, 2 years, as we were in the hospital so much. We were in the hospital every month.
And those parents know what you're going through better than anybody else.
When she was intubated, I remember posting in there, I have no idea what I posted, but I remember different parents from different seasons saying how many times their child had been intubated. And it's crazy how close to not surviving you have to be intubated. And these parents have seen their kid go through that multiple times. I couldn't fathom it. But it is vital to have a support system that you can turn to when no one else understands. As much as the people around us, we have an amazing village and support system, and as much as they try to understand, no one else can understand like another Dravet parent. The foundation and all of the parents and loved ones who have advocated for families like ours have really made a difference in getting the word out so that when we go to seek help, it's not something people haven't heard of. If McCall didn't have Dravet syndrome, I can't fathom her being the same person. So we would miss her personality and her joy, and she is the most loving person. She's so affectionate. She loves hugs and kisses
And snuggles.
and I can't imagine. She would be to some degree the same person, but we definitely find the positives in what we've gone through and what she has. And I do think there's something to everyone with Dravet syndrome and their heart and how just sweet and
They don't see the
genuine they
bad.
are.
I don't see the bad in anything.
Yeah.
It seems like to go through everything she's been through, she's a very joyful little girl.
She's tough. I wouldn't wish the Dravet syndrome away because I wouldn't wish her away. And I think she is built and made perfectly. But if somehow one day we could not have fear every day that she was going to have a seizure or worse, then I think she could bring joy to so many more people. Because she would go to dance class and sing happy birthday and play with her sister and go to school and thrive. We need a cure. We need more than just a therapeutic treatment.
And DSF is helping with all of that.
We're so thankful that parents, if you didn't know, parents started the Dravet Syndrome Foundation. They came together, and it just blows my mind the resources that they have brought together and the way that they have furthered this movement to find a cure for our babies. So thank you to them. And thank you to all of you, because we're gonna do this. We've said since McCall was diagnosed that there's gonna be a cure in her lifetime. So thank you for helping us get there.